The Super Nintendo Entertainment System is just as awesome today as it was when it made its debut back at the beginning of the 90s. Unfortunately for SNES enthusiasts who want to play on original hardware, acquiring great titles for the console seems to be getting harder and harder on the pocketbook with each passing year. This week on Friday Night Arcade, we're going to take a look at some great Super Nintendo cartridges that won't break the bank and can be purchased for under $15. First up, Star Fox. This game was the first to utilize the special Super FX graphics chip built right into the cartridge itself. The chip was touted as being able to help boost the Super Nintendo's graphical capabilities, including such blasphemy as 3D graphics on a 16-bit system. Some will argue that the oversized polygons and gameplay slowdown didn't age well, but back in the day this game was a huge deal, and it's still a pretty incredible feat in my book. It's fun just to pick up and play, and the soundtrack is one of my all-time favorites. Keeping with the space shooter theme, it's DARIUS Twin, or is it DARIUS Twin? I don't know. I always wondered what would happen if giant robot fish monsters invaded, and this game makes that dream a reality for me. I've heard some purists argue that this game is a little too easy, but I never understood that complaint, as it's just nice to be able to pick up and play. And I don't even have to worry about my OCD taking over, as it automatically picks which parts of your ship get powered up next. There's no tedious menus where you have to decide between speed or a weapons boost. It's all predetermined. I also love the fact that you get to keep your power-ups even if you die, and the graphics are nice to look at as well. I realize schmuck purists will probably scoff at those things, but hey, I'm getting kinda old and my thumbs just aren't as fast as they used to be. The soundtrack is also amazing. The music from Level 1 is one of my favorite game tracks of all time. If you want something a bit more challenging in your space shooter, then you might like GRADIUS 3 instead. Pretty much the gold standard in 16-bit space shooters, GRADIUS 3 features all the customization you could want in your weapons power-ups, and it's got a catchy soundtrack to boot. I love the elegant backgrounds, and no two levels are exactly the same, and the bosses are all over-the-top huge sprites that look great and provide a robust challenge. Let's shift gears and look at some great 2D platformers under $15 that aren't named Super Mario World. First up is Out of This World, a bizarre cinematic side-scroller that combines unique graphics with puzzle-solving aspects not normally seen in a game like this at the time. I recently did a full review of this game, so I won't say too much else about it, but if you've never played this one, it's definitely worth a look. If you can get past the fact that the play control is kinda bad, there's an interesting gameplay experience here unlike anything else you've probably ever seen on the console. The story is a science fiction thriller where you play a physicist who's been futzing with a hadron collider and gets sucked into a different world where pretty much everything and everyone is out to kill you. You befriend one of the potato aliens that live on this weird planet and he tries to help you escape. To say much else would be a disservice to the game, so check it out for yourself sometime. Next up, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, the third entry in Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins series. You won't believe it, but there's a princess who's been kidnapped and it's up to you to rescue her. You take on the role of Arthur the Knight and you have to save the princess from Emperor Sardius. Sardius kidnapped the princess to find out the location of the goddess's bracelet, a rare artifact capable of destroying Sardius. You'll battle your way through a nightmarish wasteland, taking on hordes of the undead while picking up power-ups along the way. The SNES version suffers from a little bit of slowdown due to all the enemies on screen at once, but it's not unplayable and just takes some getting used to. This game is insanely difficult, like ridiculously, idiotically difficult, just like the others in the series, and in keeping with tradition, once you make it to the end and find the bracelet, you have to make it back through the game a second time in order to defeat the final boss, Sardius, and get the true ending. In keeping with platformers, check out The Lion King based off the hit Disney film. It's not bad for a movie game, and the cartoony sprites are a spot-on replication of their movie counterparts. It all looks and runs really smooth, and the character animations are very well done. It's got a Donkey Kong Country kind of vibe to it. The level design is, at times, unique. I'm fairly convinced Level 2 was designed by the devil. There are no enemies, it just involves getting bounced around by rhinos, flung around by monkeys, and riding an ostrich while dodging pigs and low-hanging branches. You die a lot. Give it a try sometime and you'll see what I mean. Overall though, I enjoy the music and the backgrounds are all beautifully detailed, really showing off what the Super Nintendo can do. If you're looking for something different, give this one a shot. Keeping with the movie theme, Batman Returns. This one's from Konami, so you know it's probably good. For starters, the cutscenes are all pretty cool for their day. Developers wanted to show off those 16-bit graphics, and having digitized still pics from the movie was a thing during this era. They knew kids would be drooling over how realistic these graphics looked in their Nintendo Power. But the game's actually really fun too. This is basically the poor man's Turtles in Time, but it's pretty dang good at its own right. The controls are smooth and simple, and beating the tar out of bad guys with your bare hands is very satisfying. You've got some special weapons too. The boomerang makes a handy stun weapon if you're in over your head. The sprites all look great. Whether it's Batman or the bad guys, everybody is very detailed. And the backgrounds all look like something from the set of Tim Burton's Batman films. This is an easy game to just pick up and play if you need a beat 'em up, and it's cheap. SimCity. This takes me back. I freaking love this game. This is one of those games where you think to yourself, oh, I'll just build one more police station to cut down on crime, and then all of a sudden 4 hours later, you're still sitting there building the megalopolis of your dreams like a goober. It's just a super chill, laid-back building simulation nirvana. I always loved the graphical style of this game, and the chunky 16-bit SNES pixels lended themselves perfectly to the aesthetic of the buildings. It's just that right mix of cartoony realism. It's also a surprisingly complex game, but not so much so that it's not fun. You have all sorts of city planner issues to consider, such as crime rates, pollution, traffic, and zoning. However, I feel like the modern city simulators tend to get too carried away. I don't want to have to build sewer systems, but I do want to worry about adjusting my tax rates to make sure I can properly fund my police force while maintaining my roadways and mass transit systems. Hey, I gotta draw the line somewhere. And of course, after you've spent some time building up your town, the only thing left to do is unleash all sorts of disasters. You know you want to. Tornadoes, earthquakes, fires, and even Bowser. That's right, Bowser himself shows up in the Super NES version and he's ticked. What's not to love about this game? Shifting gears to sports, NBA Jam. The arcade classic from Midway has a really nice port on the Super Nintendo along with the sequel, NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Both are worthy additions to your library if you just want to be able to pick up and play with your friends, or you just have nostalgia for 90s NBA basketball, when teams played defense and there weren't stupid team names like the Pelicans. Seriously, what is up with this thing? Anyway, NBA Jam is still awesome today, featuring all the ridiculous dunks you remember along with that iconic voiceover from Tim Kitzrow.
Yes! The rebound! Heating up!
He's an interesting follow on Twitter, by the way. There's all sorts of codes to play as other characters too, like Al Gore and Bill Clinton, and of course, if you can make 3 shots in a row...
The rebound! He's on fire!
So fun fact about this game, lead developer Mark Turmel was initially from the Bay City, Michigan area and grew up an avid Detroit Pistons fan. Longtime NBA fans will no doubt recall the intense rivalries between the Bulls and the Pistons, and the Bulls eventually surpassed the Pistons. Turmel decided to even the playing field in the game and admitted to adding some special code that basically made the Bulls players throw up bricks in any sort of last-second shot situation. He also purposely lowered Scottie Pippen's statistics anytime the Bulls were playing the Pistons.
The steal!
Capping off the list with an RPG, check out Wizardry 5, Heart of the Maelstrom. Or is it Maelstrom or Maelstorm? I don't know. The SNES was known for having a pretty stacked cadre of RPGs, but unfortunately most of them are fairly expensive. This might be a sleeper gem though if you're willing to put in the time. I'll admit, I'm not terribly familiar with this series, but the story seems to be pretty standard RPG fare. What matters is the gameplay, and there's plenty to do. The dungeons take place in a 3D environment, so you'll probably need a pencil and paper to keep track of where you're going as you explore. And there's random monster encounters. I like the monster artwork, and although you don't necessarily need spectacular graphics to have a satisfying RPG experience, they're not bad to look at. There's also plenty of menu management here as you put together your party and equip everybody. The music is nothing special, but it's not terrible. Overall, I feel like you could probably do a lot worse for the $5 to $10 this game tends to go for. Take a chance and see what you think. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Friday Night Arcade. I wanted to let you know too that Friday Night Arcade t-shirts are available from Amazon.com. There's a link in the description if you're interested in supporting the channel. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.